Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 7 o'clock p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta, Saturday night, October the 2nd. This is Worldwide Epidemic of Child Abuse and Human Rights Abuses. I changed the show from this morning to tonight because I slept in and just wasn't quite ready to do the show, so sorry about that. I usually don't do that, but I thought, well, I don't want to cancel the show, so I'll just move it to a later time. So, yeah, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank you so much for being here. I was looking around and just checking out to see, what kind of information there was out there and on the whole issue of worldwide epidemic of child abuse and human rights abuses, right? I mean, there's just so much information out there. It's crazy. I found an article. It's a PDF download, actually, and it's a great resource it's a report card on child protection. It's posted on UNICEF. www.unicef.org/publications. You can /files /progress_4_children -number no.8. And so you can find this PDF there on UNICEF. It's called the Progress for Children, a report card on child protection, November 8th, September 2009. It's relatively current material. There's not a whole lot out there for 2010. We won't see that stuff coming out until next year, as the reports for the year come in that are published. For this year, we won't see any of that until next year, right? So this is all the information we're getting is really just pretty old, and even though this is 2009, September 2009, that's still pretty current compared to 2007 or 2006. Most of the information out there about child abuse and child rights and whatnot is all from 2006, 2007. So it's hard to find really up to date stuff. Unless somebody's posting something on somewhere online, you just don't find it. So, but we'll go with this because I really want to take a look at this. This is called Progress for Children, a report card on child protection, number 8, September 2009, from UNICEF. And it's 52 pages long, so I don't think we're going to cover the whole thing here. But I wanted to look at a couple sections, and one is violence against children, and another section that I think is very important to look at, which is sexual exploitation and abuse of children. And this PDF just covers everything: children in the justice systems, children in emergencies, children without parental care, children with disabilities, child trafficking, migration, child marriage, birth registration, landmines, explosives, remnants of war and small arms. Covers has regional overviews: West and Central Africa, Eastern and Southern Africa, South Asia, Middle East and North Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, and East Asia and the Pacific, and different things like that. It's a great reference. Lots of material here, and so that's what I want to look at tonight. The foreword here, they said around the world. I'm just reading right from this PDF here. Around the world, far too many children are subject to violence, exploitation, and abuse. Some are forced to work under harmful conditions. Others face violence or abuse in their homes, their schools, their communities, or in institutional care. In some places, children are targets for illegal recruitment by armed groups and armed forces, or are forced to flee their homes due to conflict or natural disaster. And millions, especially girls, are subject to sexual violence and abuse as well as harmful traditional practices. So this is just it. It's a worldwide epidemic, really. It's a worldwide issue. My focus lately has been, North America. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. Excuse me. And we volunteer. All of us are volunteers, and we're working really hard to promote education and awareness and prevention of child abuse here in North America, right? But we really are a worldwide child abuse prevention organization. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization who, is dedicated to getting the information out to people as far as statistics and reporting, intervention, prevention, right? Education really is the key, and if we can get everybody to do their part and become educated as to what's going on around the world and in North America and in their own homes, we could stop a lot of abuse. We could stop a lot of child abuse, right? It's just so important. They did list here, there's a number 2, promoting social change as far in the forward here. Many forms of violence against children are tacitly or implicitly condoned by society. These include child marriage, female genital mutilation, cutting, corporal punishment, and domestic violence. See, you bet. I like this article because it spells it right out, and without saying, we're spelling this out, we're just shoving this in your face. This is all, abuse happens because people condone it. That's why abuse is happening, because people think it's perfectly okay to do these things to children and to people, and they think that they have a right to endanger or to hurt or exploit someone. There's a whole lot of people out there who think they have a right to exploit children sexually and in every other way. And they just don't have any regard for human life, right? And then there's a whole lot of people that believe that abusing women is perfectly okay, and there's many cultures around the world that think it's perfectly fine to abuse your whole family and kill them or whatever you want to do. And this is absolutely ridiculous because this is barbaric, and the whole issue is that this is 2010. So if we haven't figured this out by now, really, it's disgraceful. And we should all hang our heads in shame because this should not be happening. A child should never be abused, not ever. And as far as people, domestic violence and abuse situations go, there's no reason for that. There's no purpose or reason for abusing anybody. So, I stand up for all human rights, right? But I mainly focus on child rights, and that's because children have no voice and no protection. Unless we stand up and be their voice and protect them, they don't have that. And so we have to protect their rights and we have to protect their lives, right? So important. As far as adults go, it's their choice, as far as North America goes, to get out, of an abusive situation. And, people say, oh, well, they threatened this, my partner said that they would, whether it's a man or woman, doesn't matter. There's women are abusers too. They say, I'll kill you if you leave, or, kill the children if you leave or whatever. Well, they'll kill you if you stay, right? Guaranteed. So either way, right? So, you got to try to save your life, right? But in these other countries, many countries around the world, these people don't have a choice because there's nowhere for them to go. If the partner, mainly the women in these other countries, leave these abusive relationships, they don't have anywhere to go. And if they end up on the street, then they're just victims of if they're children, they're victims of sexual assault. If they're adults, they're victims of sexual assault and exploitation. People, don't really think about that. Like in some of these countries, where would a woman go if she leaves her abusive partner? If she ends up on the street, she's just going to end up a prostitute or dead. Even here in North America, that's going on because people don't access what's out there. You have to really, we have stuff here in North America to help people out, but you have to put your foot down as a victim, and you have to say, you are going to help me. I need help, and I do not want to be on the street, and I do not want to be involved in illegal activity, and I do not want to get involved in substance abuse and prostitution, and so therefore you're going to have to help me. And knock on the government's door and, go through the red tape and deal with it, and you will get some help, but you do have to put your foot down and be very serious about it. But in these other countries, they don't have any help at all. There's no help for these people. And so that's the whole issue. And there's no help for the children, you bet. There's no help for the adults, so there's no hope for the children, right? There's no help for them. And so that's why it's so important that we take a look at this stuff, not only in North America, but around the world, right? These children don't deserve that. Nobody does, right? And it's absolutely horrible that society really has to change the way that they feel about this and stand up and get involved, in whatever way that we can. I just saw a commercial on the TV here just a while back and this afternoon, and they were talking about, the whole issue of children starving around the world and stuff, and it's like they're on there talking about it and crying and making their plea, right? But they have to do it, because if they don't, then what people don't know about, if people don't know there's a problem, they won't even. How are they going to fix it, right? So even within our own country, with child abuse and domestic violence, sexual assault, these horrible abuses towards our own people in our own countries, North America wide. If we don't know about the problem, how are we going to fix it? Right? So that's why it's so important for people to stand up and start talking about it and get the information out to people. And that's why primary prevention is really the number one way to go, because it stops the abuse before it happens. Right? We don't want to have to pick up the pieces afterwards. What we want to do is stop it. Right? And so that's really, and that's what I'm doing here, primary prevention. And I don't mind talking about this stuff because it's so important that we do, right? It's what's embarrassing is that this is still happening. It's not embarrassing to talk about it. It's embarrassing that this is still happening, and it's embarrassing that our society has not been able to get control on it. And $104 billion being pumped in because of child abuse. $104 billion as of 2007 is being spent every year because of child abuse. It's not to help stop child abuse. It's because of child abuse. We're talking all the programs and all the the different governmental agencies that work to social workers, counseling therapists, hospitals, you name it, the different programs out there. $104 billion. So why is this still a problem if that kind of money is being pumped out to stop child abuse? You never see any ads. You never see any ads on the media, to wake people up to smell the coffee, not to hurt their children or not to abuse their partners. Once in a great while you see something. I saw an ad actually for the first time this year on TV. It was an ad campaigning to stop child abuse, right? And I thought, yes, that's what we need to see, but we need to see it every day. Every single day, that thing should be running across the screen at some point. But then see, the TV, the people that own these television stations, and they're like, well, we don't want to lose ratings. And nobody wants to see that. So we're only going to post it once a year. We'll only allow that commercial to go on every 6 months or something, right? And so it doesn't do any good because it's not in people's faces saying we've got to stop child abuse, right? So it is so important that we get involved and do what we can, right? So important. And I wanted to look at, in this article here, for this PDF, Violence Against Children, the section here, because this is so important. I know kids are starving out there, and we're losing. I don't know how many millions around the world every year die from starvation and lack of clean drinking water, and that's horrible. Because you see these. I pay attention. I don't hide and go hide behind my fake little life or something that a lot of people do. Like, I'm just too busy painting my nails or rearranging my flowers. I mean, who cares? Like I'm paying attention because I care about the situation in this world, and it sucks. And the reason that I know it sucks is because I was there as a child, and I know it sucks. You know what I mean? I wasn't starving to death, but I was definitely being killed spiritually in every other way. And, I was abused as a child, so I'm coming at you from a survivor. So the whole thing is I know what it's like to suffer as a child. I know what these kids are going through. And, it's sad when you see this stuff on TV about these children who are starving to death and, they're dying from these diseases, waterborne illnesses because of the lack of clean drinking water and diarrhea and whatnot. And in these other countries, right, these third world countries, excuse me, and it's absolutely horrible because their parents are holding them, their mothers usually, because the father, who knows where he is, the mothers are usually holding the poor little starving, wizzled up babies, and they're just crying, and they many times have lost almost all their children, and they're dying themselves. So it's like, you watch that, and you sit there and think, oh my God, how horrible is that? Because they probably love that baby. They love that child, and they love their children. They can't, what are they going to do? They can't do anything to even help themselves. I mean, of course it does make you feel bad because it's like, oh, that's horrible. But what really pisses me off is people who have children and then abuse them or, in any way, or just throw them away in the trash can or whatever they do. That makes me really mad because that's preventable. And so is the world hunger problem. But, that's another story. But the whole issue here is violence against children is a huge problem around the world. And no child deserves to have to live in fear like that. And I'll just read some of this article here. The true extent of violence against children is impossible to measure because so much of it happens in secret and is not reported. Probably the broadest assessment of this statement is the data on physical violence compiled by the Innocenti Research Center for the UN Secretary General Study on Violence Against Children 2006, which led to an estimate of between 500 million and 1.5 billion children experiencing violence annually. And that's true. There's no possible way that could not be true. All we have to do is think about what's going on around the world and think about the fact that these children have no protection, they have no rights, and they're experiencing all kinds of violence. It says, although some violence is unexpected and isolated, most violence against children is carried out by people children know and should be able to trust, such as parents, step-parents or parents' partners, schoolmates, teachers, and employers. Certain groups of children are particularly vulnerable, including children with disabilities, children belonging to minority groups, children living on the streets, adolescents in conflict with the law, and refugee and displaced children. Often children who face violence or witness it remain silent out of fear and stigma, and many children accept violence as an inevitable part of life. So although the family should be the natural environment for protection of children, the home can also be a place where children experience violence in the form of discipline. Data from 37 countries that carried out an optional module on child discipline during the third round of multiple indicator cluster surveys from 2005 to 2006 show that 86% of children 2 to 14 years old experience physical punishment and or psychological aggression. That's 86% of children between the years of 2 and 14 experience physical punishment or psychological aggression. 2 out of 3 children are subject to physical punishment. So that's worldwide. Physical punishment is a widespread practice, even where it is not approved by mothers or caregivers. In 35 countries, with the available data, the percentage of mothers or caregivers who think physical punishment is necessary to raise a child is consistently lower than the percentage of children 2 to 14 years old who were actually subjected to such discipline. So it's happening. They can't, it's just inevitable, right? And it's just absolutely horrible. It says, available data also indicate widespread acceptance of wife beating, a form of domestic violence. Data from 68 countries indicate that more than 50% of girls and women 15 to 49 years old think that a husband is justified in hitting or beating his wife under certain circumstances. So these women and these, children really to us, 15 years old, but, these women between the ages of 15 and 49 years old, half of them in the study said that it was justified that that under certain circumstances their husband could beat them or hit them. They think it's okay, but see, they're brainwashed. I mean, what do they know? They're ignorant. They don't know anything else, right? And it's not really their fault. That's absolutely horrible. To think that it's necessary to use violence to control someone, right? So here on this PDF, you can see on page 12, if you go to this website, www.unicef.org, unicef.org, /publications/files, /progress _for_children -INO.8. It'll bring up this PDF, right? And they have all these graphs and whatnot about what's going on around the world as far as abuse goes, physical punishment, psychological aggression, wife beating, and all this stuff around the world, right? This is not just, North American issue. This is around the world, and thank God over here in North America we have programs in place that can help people, from shelters to, to counseling and therapists and people, group support, people trying to work through groups, to get some help and to know that they're not alone and, to be able to relate and validate, what happened to each other and stuff, which is so important. In these other countries, they just think it's part of life. That they just think, oh yeah, my husband beats me, and I guess that's okay because that's the way it's always been in our life, And I mean, as a survivor, I'm coming at you from that too because I know what that's like, and to think that that's your life and accept it for that it's normal. That's how I grew up, and so you don't even think of getting help because you just think that, well, this is the way my life is. So what can you do? And it's absolutely horrible. It says married girls are usually required to perform the bulk of domestic work in their households. Their relative youth and powerlessness make them more vulnerable to both domestic violence and sexual abuse, including non-consensual sex with their husbands. They are unlikely to be protected by condom and therefore increasingly at risk of contracting sexually transmitted infections, including HIV. Child marriage can also result in bonded labor or sexual exploitation, and in some cases, girls or boys are trafficked into a forced marriage. So that's a fact. I mean, we all know about that. And this is horrible. And this is going on right now as we speak. And it's just sad. It's been going on for so many years, and people think, well, why are we talking about it now? I saw a comment on Facebook there today, and somebody said we're 100 years too late. And it's like, well, not really, because 100 years ago somebody started talking about this. And here, and they have been talking about it, and they've been talking about it, and thank God for those people. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a special show here. First, I'm going to research it because I really want to talk about the pioneers who started out, the pioneers in the field of child abuse prevention. Charles Dickens is really the first person, I guess. There probably were people before him, but he was actually recognized, even though he did it as a joke. He wrote Oliver Twist in little pieces in the book, that he wrote, that famous story. He wrote it in snippets, little pieces, he put it into a newspaper just for people to read, But he was talking about the social ills of the society at that time in England, in London there, and the fact that these workhouse orphans were abused and mistreated, and he was really the first person who was willing to talk about exactly about the abuse that was going on with these kids and detail it, describe it, and let people know that, hey, it wasn't just a good life for those people. It was a hard life, and those kids, many of them died in those workhouses. They died from all kinds of whether it was physical punishment, diseases, or whatnot, just being abused so badly and just left to die. And if they went out on the road, they didn't stand a chance either, because it was during those times, it was hard to make a living, and if you were a kid who had no brains, no education, no skills, and were half starved to death your whole life, you wouldn't have much of a chance to survive out there. And there was a lot of sexual exploitation of children back in those days too, you bet. It's been going on since Roman times, right? We're talking since before that even. It's absolutely horrible. But the whole thing is I'm going to do a show actually on that coming up here pretty soon about these pioneers who started talking about child abuse prevention and that we should stop it and that it's not right. Because I know that we like in 2010 are not the first groups to come along and say stop child abuse. When I was growing up as a child and I was being abused, I knew that there was groups out there talking about stopping child abuse. So, it's been going on for a long, long time. That was in the 60s. We know that, somewhere, when people started to really recognize that this was a real problem and it became noticed was in the 1800s. But, there's been talk about it for a long, long time, and I'd like to bring up a show about sort of the history of the people who actually pioneered and started working towards stopping and preventing child abuse. And, a lot of these people would have been the church, and they would, because of the orphans and stuff that would come to them, they would try to plead with the communities and whatnot to not abuse the children, and to, even though some of them, of course, were abusers themselves, sexually abusing the children. But the thing is not all of them. There were some good people. There's good people out there. Everyone is not bad, and everyone is not an abuser. And abuse is a choice, and some people make the wrong choice, right? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a show on that, because we saw an article. I actually saw an article today that said, not an article, but a comment. Somebody said, well, you're 100 years too late. And I'm thinking, well, you know what? There's been people talking, but nobody's listening. And the people that are listening are rare, just a rare group. And it's like the people like you who listen to my show, and thank you very much. I appreciate it. The people out there who, like I listen to other people too, because they're talking and speaking out against abuse, of any kind, right? And so, of course, we're just one group of people that are interested in this, and the rest of the society we're not reaching. And so how do you reach them? Well, it's going to have to be mainstream media, because they're only watching different TV shows on TV. They're not into trying to stop child abuse. They're not into even trying to stop child abuse within their own homes, and that's why it's going on. So we have to reach those people, and it's going to be a job and a half to reach them, but we're going to do it. And there'll be more and more people you watch coming along who are going to stand up, and they're going to say, no, child abuse is wrong. We have to get think tanks going. We have to find the programs that are going to work, and we got to get this under control, because abuse is preventable, 100% preventable. So we just have to change the hearts and the minds of the people who are out there abusing their children, right, and abusing other children. And we have to, how are we going to do it? We've got to keep on talking, and we've got to keep on getting the information out, right? The more it's hidden away, the more we're silenced, the more abuse, the more that survivors and victims are silenced, the more the abusers get to continue to do what they do worldwide, right, not just North America. But so we have to stop it, right, by talking, by speaking. Right, we have to speak it out and stand up for children's rights and for all human rights, really, because otherwise we'll lose them, right? Sexual exploitation and abuse of children. It says establishing reliable numbers for children and adolescents suspected to sexual abuse and subjected to sexual abuse and sexual exploitation has proved to be a major challenge. The reason for this lack of detail of data is the clandestine nature of these crimes, making them under-recognized and under-reported. All abuse is underreported, really. Like, it's all underreported. They said that It is probable, however, that the figures encompass millions and that girls and boys of all ages and backgrounds and in every region of the world may be victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. Studies show that girls are more often abused and exploited, although boys are often affected. Along with the trauma of sexual exploitation itself, child survivors often miss out on attending school and are exposed to the risk of physical injury, sexually transmitted infections, HIV, and unwanted pregnancy, the latter of which is potentially dangerous for adolescent girls. And it says as of May 2009, 131 countries had ratified the optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child on the sale of children. Thank God. Child prostitution and child pornography, right, which criminalizes all forms of sexual exploitation of children and emphasizes support to children who are victims. But challenges remain, it says. The Rio de Janeiro Declaration and Call for Action to Prevent and Stop Sexual Exploitation of Children and Adolescents, 2008, commits governments to a set of specific time-bound goals to prevent and stop sexual exploitation of children and adolescents and to protect exploited children. So the issue of child trafficking, they said children are trafficked both within and between countries for the purposes of forced labor, prostitution, forced marriage, domestic work, begging, used by armed groups, and many other forms of exploitation. Statistics are hard to gather and often unreliable. They just don't have the ability to gather all the statistics, but we know it's a real problem. They said the United States government estimates that 600 to 800,000 people are trafficked each year across international borders. It's almost 1 million people. I mean, that's crazy, and most of them children. That's horrible, absolutely horrible. And they said that we only have a few minutes left. I want to kind of go through this and find out a little bit more. Children with disabilities, they said reliable statistics on children with disabilities are difficult to obtain. As a first step towards addressing this paucity of information, UNICEF included a disability module, the 10-question screen for child disability, in the latest multiple indicator cluster survey. And the issue of children with disabilities is cross-cutting. Children with disabilities are less likely than other children to be in school, and in some countries they have lower transition rates resulting in lower schooling attainment. They may also have trouble using the health services they need, whether it's because those services are inaccessible or due to discrimination or exclusion. Children with disabilities are particularly vulnerable to physical violence and sexual, emotional, verbal abuse, and in some instances, the disability is itself caused by maltreatment. And we know this. I mean, so many children are disabled because of the abuse that they suffer. And, that's horrible. It says data for 15 countries show that in 7 of the countries, parents of children who screened positive for disability were significantly more likely to report hitting them either on their face, head, or ears, or repeatedly as hard as possible, right? And that you can kill a child doing that, and I think a lot of people just think that when they are disciplined, they call it quote unquote disciplining their child, and they're hitting them in the head. They don't realize that they could kill that child. Even a severe spanking can kill a child. It can cause their heart to have, their heart can stop, or their veins and stuff can explode, right? You just don't know. People are so sick and twisted. So what I think that we, honestly, I mean, I'm not all, I try not to be like an eye for an eye type of thing, but I would like to see every person who abuses a child experience the same feelings, the same treatment that they treated that child with. Because wouldn't it be funny if they actually had to go through what they did to that child? That's what I would wish for my parents, that they would know what they did to us, because it would happen to them, and then they would know what it's like to be in pain and for the rest of their lives, dealing with the leftovers and the aftermath of the abuse, right? So that's the whole issue, but unfortunately that's not the case. But I wish people would straighten up and treat their children better. We have about a minute left. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I appreciate this. This is a great PDF. You should go check it out from unicef.org. They have all kinds of great publications on there. I like UNICEF, and I really like what they have to say. They're a great organization. And check out Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, http://dreamcatchersforAbusedChildren.com. And we have all kinds of great information on there. And Sandra posts steady on there daily, posting articles as well as child abuse headlines and whatnot. And you can find out what we're doing and what's happening. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our mission is to promote education and awareness and prevent and stop child abuse. We're working to educate, as many people as we possibly can on the signs and symptoms of child abuse, as well as how to report it, and how to, to help parents who are having a hard time, they don't want to lash out. So, make sure you check out our website. It's a great website. And have a great weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you real soon, and you can check my show page. I'll be back on again all next week and everything. So take good care of yourselves. If you need something, get a hold of me on Blog Talk Radio or Facebook or whatnot. And we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.